So Jennifer,
Question answer.
you've been listening to a lot of speeches and you've been learning a lot of new things. So I'd like to ask you a very simple question. Do you want your company to grow like a rocket or be very slow and steady at maybe 15-20% every year?
What should I say? Slow and steady wins the race? Slow and steady wins the race? I'll go ahead with slow and steady wins the race, but there's always a different perspective. Yeah, so let's come and listen to that.
Yeah. So that's what most people tend to do once the business reaches a scale, and then we become very conservative and we grow slowly. So I'll share with you an example of Zomato. Zomato was established in 2008. It's only 15 years that they've been in existence. They right now control 45% of the food dining delivery space. 45% in 15 years. They have 1.4 million restaurants that are tied up with them, and they are present in 1,000 cities. So it started off same 2 people, 1 peon, 1 bike, 1 menu card to be done. In 15 years, this is where you can reach. Jennifer, still slow and steady?
That's tempting. But now what about the profits? Let's check that.
Good point. So profits are a function of sales. They normally come, you invest early and you gain more. So what does a typical businessman do? How does he make a decision between growth and profit? Is a rocket-like growth good for everyone? Is a slow and steady growth more sustainable? These are questions that every business owner grapples with every time there is a situation where he wants to grow, lack of finance and other things. Our next speaker, Vivek Joshi ji, is someone who will let us understand the nuances of it. How do we take decisions about growth and how do we fund the growth? So it's my pleasure to have Vivek Joshi with us, and I would like to invite I would like to invite Naresh ji to introduce Vivek ji.
So it's my pleasure to introduce a great speaker and a great person, Vivek Joshi ji. Vivek Joshi is an advisor of a Joshi Strategic Consultant Private Limited. He is an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, a chemical engineer graduate from IIT Bombay, followed by master degree in chemical engineering from USA. He is more than 30 years of international management experience in several functions and industries. He is an author of the book Startup to Scale Up, Entrepreneur Guide for Venture Capital. His experience include business management, innovation management, supply and chain management, project management, and venture capital. He has been a director of board of several companies in the industry, healthcare and consumer goods. He has experience of working with Hindustan Lever Limited, worked at California and Florida for a number of years in consulting and process engineering. He is also a licensed chemical engineer in California. Has a master in several young professional at various stages and entrepreneur incubator of Forum. Vivek is an advisor and management consultant of AJS CPL and advises business and entrepreneur on growth turnaround and source of fund for scale-ups. So let me welcome Vivek ji to give a talk on the same.
Whenever you're done. Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon. I think we are almost at 12 o'clock. So two very inspirational talks while you get set up. So mine is a little more mundane, little more not as encouraging. While he gets set up,
Which PDF?
is he? Just a couple of points which I heard from our esteemed speakers. You know, there are 65 million MSMEs in the country. Now, my data is around 6-7 years old. We say there is a lot of entrepreneurship in India. But most of the entrepreneurship is livelihood entrepreneurship. People become entrepreneurs for livelihood. Of the MSMEs, and particularly on the younger side, and this is 6-7 years old, 90% plus are barely able to pay their people above minimum wage. And their profit, that point in time, 7-8 years back, many of you are CAs, time value of money was less than 10 lakh rupees per year. Yes, very encouraging, like Germany. Germany is an example of entrepreneurship and MSMEs. So is India. But there is a difference in these two. As we go along, we'll touch on some of these things, because apart from everything else, there are a lot of things which MSMEs also need to do. And one of the issues in the country is businesses don't scale up. And they don't scale up. Part of it is obviously the fault of the government, the banks, etc. Part of it also is a gap on what MSMEs do. So we'll switch to try and see what is it that MSMEs can do. Some of the things will be applicable, some of the things will not be applicable, but we'll see what can be done. Now, I said strategic and financial considerations. Top of your mind are financial considerations. I am unable to grow because I don't have finances. But always remember that financials are a result. They are a result of a number of things which have to go before finances. I deliver a workshop called Startup to Scale Up for early stage entrepreneurs. Often we do it pro bono. And you know, in angel forums, we find that many Indian angels end up investing in American companies. It's an international forum. So American entrepreneurs come, Canadian entrepreneurs come. They end up putting money in American entrepreneurs, not because of any preference for Americans. The American entrepreneur, when he comes before the investor, is far better prepared than the Indian entrepreneur. And the genesis for the workshop and the book which I wrote is actually that, so that before you approach an investor, what is it that you need to do? You will get 10 minutes in front of the investor. So what is it that you need to do? What is the homework that you do before you come up? That's the second part. First part, we'll talk of some of the strategic issues. Everything is happening wonderfully well in the world, and obviously India is doing very, very well. Just one caution, since I'm raising so many cautions. Around 2018, we had made some presentations to some management associations, and broadly the theme was that the coming decade, which is this decade, is going to be very turbulent, and how do businesses prepare for it? Now we are approaching the midpoint of this decade. We are in 2024. I haven't updated my presentation, but various people, various experts around the world in topics like, for example, to those of you who are curious, the Strauss-Howe institutional cycle, the Kondratiev economic cycle, the geopolitics, a relatively new area called cliodynamics, and the debt recycle theory. All of them are at conquering on one thing, that by the turbulence in this decade will keep on increasing. And by the end of this decade, the world could quite likely see a cataclysmic event, which means a very serious event, a war, a pandemic, something like that, which will reset many things. Now for us, as 5 years is still some time away, India will do relatively better. But obviously at our size of population and economy, we cannot remain unaffected. So the first strategic consideration, and why I'm relating this to you, is that if you felt that this is a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. That's a term which is very popular. If you felt that this world was VUCA, the second half of the decade is likely to be much more. So as businesses, and particularly as small businesses who do not have that resilience, which a large business like the Tatas and the Reliances can have, you need to be much more aware of the fact as that the environment around is going to be, I will not say negative, environment may be positive, but the environment will be a lot more complex and uncertain. And therefore, the importance of some of the strategic considerations. Okay, so now we'll start off with our, so why scale up? Some of the reasons are obvious. As business people, I don't need to tell you that a lot of the things are working in our favor. Number of things coming together for us. So we won't dwell on the macro situation, which appears to look good, except for what I just told you. But scale up will bring a lot of benefits. It brings up economies of scale. It brings economies of scope and learning also. But essentially, it brings economies of scale. It helps you build the robustness. You have more employee confidence, you have more customer confidence, you have more profits. It improves resilience, the ability to manage risk. So scale up has a lot of advantages. Note that I'm using the word scale up. I'm not using the word size. There is a difference between size and scale. So just being big doesn't mean that you are going to get all these benefits. You must scale, not necessarily only be big. Now, but however, scale up requires bold aspiration, which everybody in this room has, and fortunately for India, the young generation has a lot more of the aspirations. But it requires appropriate enablers. Some of the macroeconomic enablers were touched upon by the speakers earlier. And it requires clear, coherent, and consistent planning and path ahead. And this is the part you need to do before you get into financials and why financials are not coming and where they will come from. But growth creates challenges, you know that. It creates politics, you have to be able to administer, you have to be able to manage, you have to be able to coordinate, you have to be able to do division of labor. So growth will bring its own challenges. Therefore, as you scale up, you must prepare yourself to handle a certain variety of complexity. Growth brings complexity, complexity kills growth. Or more correctly, complexity kills innovation. Lack of innovation can kill growth. So this is what is called a vicious cycle, which must be broken at the appropriate stage. So your first strategic consideration is an alignment. Right from the strategy, whether you're talking of corporate strategy up to your financials, your choices must be aligned. The decisions that you make, the decisions that you opt for must be aligned. Now, of these three legs, now I have shown it in a particular way. It is not linear. One need not do it in a linear way. But for businesses which do not have a lot of time or energy or resources to work on these things, it is better to approach it in a top-down way. Think through your business strategy, see how your marketing is going to support your business strategy, see how your operations will support your marketing, and how your innovation supports both of them, and your people strategy supports all of these areas. And then you arrive at financials, which of course feed back into your strategy to see if they are adequate or not. Of these three legs, customer intimacy, operational excellence, and product leadership, every business must strive to be excellent in at least one. You can't be excellent in all three. But you must try to be excellent in at least one and try to be pretty good in the other two. It is safer to try and be excellent in your customer intimacy, which is an advantage which as small businesses that you have. So your first strategic consideration is that it is not enough to think of customers, it is not enough to think of financials. You must have an alignment in your business, which you have to think through as you think through of the scaling up. Your second strategic consideration is the importance of the industry. Warren Buffett has a saying that when a bad captain or when a good captain meets a bad industry, the industry wins. McKinsey has a study, which is for larger companies than what one would see as micro or small in India, has a study that says that 70% of your growth is because of industry. In the remaining 30% is where you play. So selecting and being in the right industry is very important. The industry plays a big role. Now, fortunately for India, almost every industry is seeing growth. Now, it may be cyclical, but almost any industry that you can point to, you can say that there will be growth. But for example, those of you who follow consumer goods industry growth hasn't been great, though consumption is a principal driver of India's business, India's GDP. So therefore, it is useful to grow in industries or parts of industries in which are likely to see consistent growth. Industry is a lot more, we talked of macro factors, industry is a lot more important than what many people associate it to be. When you are very small, it doesn't really matter. You are actually looking for your next order. But we are talking of scaling up here, that as you become bigger. So your second strategic consideration is your industry. You must understand your industry, your sub-industries, your sub-sub-industries. Just to give you we won't go into the details yet. Just to give you an example, this is how an industry gets broken up into its parts. This is life sciences, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, etc. So I can break up my healthcare industry into various things: single specialty hospitals, multi-specialty hospitals, diagnostics, medical devices is a part of healthcare but not of hospitals. So be very careful. Auto industry, you can break it up into commercial, passenger, two-wheeler, four-wheeler. These days you have your electric vehicles, you have petrol, diesel vehicles which are facing their own dynamics. Be very clear of which sub-industry you are growing in and what are the factors which are driving it. Your strategic consideration number 3 is your competitive position. Now, many of you have seen Michael Porter's generic strategies of cost leadership and differentiation. The important thing about these two, while they appear theoretical, is that these both are grounded in concepts of microeconomics. So they are not going away. At some stage, maybe not at a small industry stage, you need to start making up your mind as to what your generic strategy. Are you going to be playing on price? Or are you going to be playing on differentiation? If you're going to play on price, you have to play on your own internal cost. And if you're going to play on differentiation, then you have to play on innovation. The important part in this strategic consideration is that it cannot be seen in isolation. If you're going to play on cost, certain things need to click for you. Your processes have to be there, your management controls, your capital, all those have to align so that you play on cost. There is no point in claiming that I will play on differentiation while I don't have, let me put it as, adequately paid people below me who are not going to be innovative. Or I will exercise very tight control over their innovation. Then you are not going to get innovation. Remember, I'm talking of businesses which are at a slightly higher stage than those which have started up. So it's important for you to get this third competitive position, the strategic consideration, right. Your fourth strategic consideration, and this is where a lot of Indian businesses are shaky. We read our environment reasonably well. We are good at managing the environment, and I'm saying that from a positive standpoint. I'm not talking about corruption here. However, what we as Indian businesses are weak on is organization design. As you grow, like a child grows to be a teenager grows to be an adult, your body's systems change. Similarly, as you grow, your organization design needs to evolve. Now, there are two parts of organization design. What I've shown in red here are the hard part, the structure, systems, processes. These are the soft part, the culture and styles. You cannot operate the way, if you are a 50-person organization, you cannot operate the way that you were operating as a 3-person or a 5-person organization. Somewhere in our makeup as maybe a society or as businesses, we tend to undermine the importance of processes. Sony, it's a very large company, but when Sony was stepping outside Japan, Sony's chairman had said that when I step outside Japan, none of my competitive advantages are going to translate except for processes. And Japanese companies started making a difference internationally because of their processes, which are now cited. All of us study Japanese processes. So the importance of structure, systems, and processes. At the right stage, you must have the right structure. You must have the right processes. Now, what is that right stage? There are anecdotal, in India, nobody has studied it thoroughly. This is an example of a functional structure. Now, structures can evolve to be functional. They can evolve to be divisional. They can evolve as matrix structures, and then they can evolve as network structures, which is becoming very common these days. We are a network structure as a gig economy. However, for businesses which are growing, usually functional structure is the first one that you will have, and you should have. It's relatively simpler, and it will bring various areas into it. So this is an example of a functional structure and underlying processes. And it's important that when you start bringing processes and bringing alignment, that the gap that I have seen most often is that businesses don't bring in performance management processes early enough. So you do not have an alignment from your sales team or from your operations team right up to the top, or you do not have an alignment between your sales manager and your operations manager. So it's important that your performance management system come in early and that be aligned to your goals as a CEO. It's not important for a 1-person or a 2-person business which is starting up, but as you grow, these processes have to start clicking in. Remember, one thing about processes is processes kill innovation. So there is a right balance between getting the processes and continuing to be innovative. But it's a necessity as you grow that you get in the right systems. So that's your strategic consideration 4. Based on the discussion so far and my understanding of the audience, I didn't get a chance to interact with any of you. I will skip strategic consideration 5, which is mostly for slightly larger businesses. But we'll skip that for the time being as to where you go to the growth strategy. A major gap in Indian businesses, particularly small businesses, and as we interact with small businesses which come up for funding, which I'll cover in the second part of my discussion, is lack of planning. Now, it's true that nobody won a war because of a plan. There's a saying that, that plan is the first casualty in a war. But there's a flip side to it, that failing to plan is planning to fail. Those of you who are engineers, and I hope there are some here, lots of chartered accountants, in engineering there is a saying, necessary and sufficient condition. Something happens when it fulfills necessary and sufficient conditions. Planning is a necessary condition. It is not a sufficient condition. But you must plan. So what do you look for when you sit and plan? First you look for is, what do we know? Look at your recent performance, gather market information, and we'll look at some market information now, and review what are your resources which are going to support your growth. What do we want to accomplish? We don't have time now, but I would have really liked to ask a few of you as to what you would like to accomplish. And I would have liked to see if you have put quantitative goals. It is very necessary that when you get into the implementation stage, that you have quantitative goals. I am generating 5 crores today. In 3 years, I want to be generating 50 crores. Without that, no scale up, no growth has a meaning. I want to grow is not enough. So it's essential to get these, the time horizon, the numbers, and the objectives and milestones. And how will we do it? As I said, you identify your drivers, you get your metrics. And then subsequently from your metrics, you build in your other details. From your metrics will arise actions which need to be taken to achieve those metrics. So if you're not doing planning over at least a 3-year horizon, then you're not planning for growth. You're growing by luck or by accident. For a startup, yes, the first strategy is survival. So you will take any order which comes, you will do any business, which is okay. But once you start growing, it needs to be a planned activity. Okay, so we talked of business strategy, and then we will be talking of financials. We'll be skipping the remaining 3 areas in between because we don't have time. But a critical part of looking at strategic considerations is looking at market forecast. How do I forecast the market? Forecast by definition is probabilistic. There is no pakka number on forecast. Now, we were talking of 7.3% GDP growth for India. You know, GDP growth gets revised over 3 years. This year's GDP growth will be revised over 3 years subsequently. That's because forecasts and these other things are, have their doubts. So essentially, there are methods to do it. One method is a build-up. If I'm making soap today and if I'm making shampoo today, this is the soap I'll be making 3 years later. This is the shampoo I'll be making 3 years later, and that's the build-up which I will have. So that is the build-up method. Second method is what we see early stage companies do very often, decomposition method. 140 crore people, they brush twice a day, 20% of them brush twice a day. This is the consumption of toothpaste they do, so this is where the consumption of toothpaste will be. Therefore, these many toothpaste tubes will be sold. Therefore, I will be selling these many toothpaste. This is decomposition. You come top down. That's another method. You need to do basically both method. Or a safer method for early stage companies is indexing. The leader in my business is growing at 10%. Come a little down because your leader might be a Hindustan Lever or Larsen or Tubro or Reliance. Come a step down, see what are the mid-sized companies, what are they growing at. If they are growing at, if a mid-sized company is growing at 10%, unless I am a startup, it is going to be very difficult for me to grow at 50%, 60%. But then if a mid-sized company is growing at 10% and I am 1 or 2 levels below that, there's no reason for me not to grow at 15%, 20%. So this is indexing. What does this require? This requires a reasonably good understanding of your industry. To grow, you must understand your industry or your sub-industry. Now, where do you get that information? Every quarter, the CEO of all these listed companies comes and presents their results. He'll talk of what is happening in the market, etc. So at least listen to the leader of the sector or of the industry, and then listen to someone who is a mid-sized company and lower down. Easiest way to get some of this distilled information. If you have access, databases like CMIE will give you both what is happening in the industry in terms of hard quantitative numbers and what is likely to happen next. Another good thing, and here almost everybody here must be playing in the stock market, are analyst reports on stock, on the industry that you are in. Apart from the stocks that you play, whether it is Zerodha or anybody else that you are doing with, they have a section on research. And in that section of research, there are analyst reports. You don't have to read all of them. Just pick out one good analyst report and read through of what is happening in the sector and do it regularly. I won't go into difference of market potential, market forecast, not necessary for us here. We'll only talk of market forecast here, which is more of practical purposes. So that will tell you how things are expected to evolve over the next 3 to 4 years. From there, then you come to sales forecast. One mistake we often see is companies coming and making look, nobody needs to know that India is 140 crores and growing at this rate, and therefore there's a lot of growth and things to be sold or bought. What we are interested in is what you will sell. And you are not selling to 140 crore people. You probably will not even have 2% market share in 3 years. So what is it that you will do? We have 3 minutes to go. I thought it was 45 minutes. Okay, well, Okay, I have lost track of time then. Okay, so I'll have to skip a lot of information because I know you people are more interested in the finance part of it. Yeah, I agree with you, but again, this is what we see most often. People coming and talking of finance, and as I said, then वो बात बनता नहीं है. How do I go down? Okay, we'll skip all of this. I wish we had considered the business plan because we see very weak business plans which come through. Cascade of profit. We won't go into the details. When you come in front of a financier, the first question that they will ask you is what is your gross margin? Now we come across CEOs coming and presenting and we ask what is your gross margin, and they say my finance advisor will know. That's a very sorry picture to put out. You don't have to calculate gross margin. Your finance advisor will calculate. But remember, gross margin is your fuel for growth. If you don't know your gross margin and its implications, you don't know where your growth is coming from. Okay? The second important thing is you will be asked is what is your EBITDA margin? And the people who are asking you this question have a fair idea of what your industry generates in terms of gross margins and EBITDA margins. So you should have them like this. Not the calculation, but what are the implications. Okay. Many people are interested in PE, VC investing. So what are these? These are the parts. You have seeds, you have startups, you have early stage, you have expansion. These two are not relevant to you. This is where most of you will be pitching for, which is angel forums, family offices, incubators, and venture capital. And some of you may be looking for private equity. So what is available? You have angel forums, incubators, early stage funds, growth capital. These days there are a lot of impact funds where you can demonstrate social impact and also get funding. Important thing to remember is that private equity will look for at least 25% IRR. And VC will look for 35% IRR, and impact fund is also a profit-making entity. They will look for 15% IRR at least. So you need to it's your responsibility to deliver them that IRR. So you need to be conscious of how that is going to happen. We'll skip industry trend. What does an investor look for? Number one, promoter and management, because it's a bet on promoter and management. So be careful. There will be a forensic diligence done on you. So be on the right social platforms. Be careful what you write on social platforms, whom you interact with, etc. Because there will be a forensic diligence done on you. Second is your business model. Third is industry scenario, whether you are in an attractive industry or not. And very important, the exit path. It's your responsibility to give an exit. Okay, how do you attract investor interest? Demonstrate that your business is differentiated. If the differentiation is only that I have a lot of experience and contacts in the industry, demonstrate that. No one is going to fund a Me Too business. What are the entry barriers? Is the business scalable? As I said, scale and size are different. If your plan is to open a restaurant in Mumbai and a restaurant in Bangalore, your business may not be scalable. It may have size. So restaurant businesses, therefore, are not that attractive for PEVCs to invest in. It's okay, this is important, it is okay to be non-profit making. This is something which has changed over the last 10 years. It's okay if you're not making profits. You need to have a clear path to profitability over the next 3 years. Similarly, it is okay if you have started a business and failed, and you are again starting a different business. But you need to tell them as to what you have learned out of this failure and how you're going to go ahead. So it's okay to fail. It is okay to not be making profits, especially if you are at early stage. Okay. It's a process. It will take 6 months. Plan in time. Too many early stage businesses run out of cash while this process goes on. ये फटाफट नहीं होता है. We'll skip this. Now, to raise early stage equity capital is very expensive. It's the most expensive form of capital. So don't rush into it. Start your business, grow it from internal accruals and from where you can collect. Raise certain amount of debt, again grow your business, and then start going in for equity capital. Make sure you start with angels, give angels an exit after the first 1 or 2 rounds. Because later on, the VC, when they come in, they don't want a whole laundry list of angels to be in the business. But don't rush into raising equity capital. Okay, we'll skip this. So what could be the other avenues of capital? We have a session on IPO in small exchanges, so I don't need to touch that. SIDBI has a credit guarantee fund, which you can go for. They guarantee 90% of the credit to the bank, so you don't have to show collateral. However, what you have to show to the bank and to SIDBI is that you can repay the money. This is something which is often missed out, कि हमको loan नहीं मिला. Well, your business plan is not showing that you can repay the money. Just because there is no collateral doesn't mean that you can qualify for that. The interest rate is high. Last time I checked, it was 14%. Then you have term loans from banks. These days, banks are also not insisting on collateral for small loans. Mudra is use it. 26 lakh crores or some such number has been dispersed. It keeps changing every day. And some 45 crore advances have been made. So Mudra, public sector banks are not that keen on Mudra. So there used to be a joke that it is the next NPA crisis. But fortunately, it hasn't turned out to be like that. The NPAs are about 2.5%. So Mudra has 3 categories, but make sure that you try and tap Mudra. Again, interest rate is high, but you don't need collateral. Now, there are package schemes of incentives. DPI, your Department for Promotion of IT. Similarly, you have various state governments. Telangana has one, Maharashtra has one. Almost all state governments have various schemes which they keep reaching out to people to try and come and tap into. BIRAC has something for those businesses which are in healthcare. The others are routine forms of funding or financing. So that's other avenues of capital. We'll skip this, not germane to. This is when I go as a jury for business plan, what I look at. Okay. So I hope I have finished reasonably in time by skipping through. Done. I don't think we have time for Q&A.
Yes, for questions that people may have, you can put it on the WhatsApp group. You could, we'll forward it to the speaker. Thank you, Vivek ji, for an excellent session. I'd like to call Kavit ji to felicitate the speaker along with Hemang ji and Naresh ji.
Yeah, please. That would be nice. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I must shake your hand. The last time I gave a shawl was to a professor, so I'm not a professor. So, but Right. Yes, yes, yes. We must.
But we all learn from you, Vivek.
Thank you.